Important part of our team. As we've discussed in the past, anytime we do a human trafficking operation, anytime that we're dealing with the most vulnerable children, we look for partners, for experts. And there is no one in the community that's more of an expert than Dr. Thomas. And I say this only because she allows me to. She, too, was a child sex victim. So she is a subject matter expert in many ways that she should have never been a subject matter expert. But we're going to talk today first about, we're going to bifurcate this operation. We're going to first talk about the pornography, the child pornography, and I'm going to introduce you to these folks. As I've said over and over before, parents have got to look out for their children because there are deviant people like this that are looking out to attack their children. We have studies that tell us that the overwhelming majority of people that view child porn would sexually attack a child if given the opportunity. Our detectives once again have done a remarkable job. Our detectives are simply the very best in this business, and I think if you didn't already agree, you will by the end of this press conference today when you see the remarkable work that they did, because, as I'm going to tell you in detail, they found 5 child victims this time. We search for child victims in every one of these cases, and it's very rare to find one. And we found 5. But let's talk about the deviants that engage in viewing, downloading, and trading child porn. How about Patrick Jonathan? Patrick is 33 years of age. He was a corrections officer for the Florida State Prison System, the Department of Corrections. We charged him with 26 counts of child porn, 1 count of sharing or transmission of child porn. He confessed to us. His bond was set at $135,000. He said that he's been looking at child porn for 10 years. And listen to this. This is a guy who is charged with holding people in prison that violate the law. I knew one day you'd be here to pick me up. Are you kidding me? The guy who is supposed to be working in the system to safely house prisoners admitted that he looked at child porn and he knew we'd be there to arrest him. Well, now he's in jail. And our prayer is that we send him to the state prison to be an inmate where he once was a correction officer. He also spoke of being sexually aroused anytime he looked at child porn, but then he felt bad afterwards. But he would still do it again and again and again. He's a nasty man. And then there's Richard Sizlove. I didn't make that name up. He was a park manager for Polk RV Park. He's charged with 28 counts of child porn. His bond was set at $290,000. He confessed. He's a Navy veteran. He said he's been viewing child porn over 20 years, and the youngest child porn he's ever viewed were children that was as young as 6 months old. 6 months old, children abused. He said what really sexually arouses him are the toddlers. Richard Sizlove. Then there's David Boyd, who's 52. He is a clerk for a South Florida Gun and Pawn in Lakeland. He was charged with 516 counts of child porn and 1 count of sharing the child porn. His bond is $2.5 million. He would, while he's wearing this child porn, now you can't make this stuff up, wear women's underwear. Did you hear me? He would wear women's underwear. He would dress up for the occasion. And then he would on one occasion, he photoshopped his face over one of the photographs of a child who was providing sex to an adult. He photographed his face in there as being the one receiving the sex. This guy is extra, 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 extra nuts. Deviant. This kind of person needs to be in jail for a long time. Then there's Tyreek Lampkin. He's unemployed. He lives with his mom, his grandma, and his aunt. And he's charged with 197 counts of child porn and 1 count of transmission. He confessed. He would look at porn because he didn't have a job. He had opportunities to look at it every day. Then this is what he told us during his confession, that he was saving this child porn so he could turn it over to law enforcement. You know, like he was doing his own investigation. He doesn't look like Dick Tracy to me. And he was trading child porn. And then he said, well, the reason I was trading child porn was so I could raise awareness. He didn't look like Dr. Thomas to me. This guy actually told us that. Well, we hope that he has that same story for the jury. And if the jury sees it the way we do, he'll get to go to state prison with the rest of his buddies. And then there's Luigi Santera. Luigi is a Hilton Hotel housekeeping manager at Lake Buena Vista. Oh, he was. Thank you, Hilton, for firing him. He was in possession of 148 counts of child porn, and we charged him with 12 counts of sharing this child porn. His bond was set at $426,000. Now, not only did he like child porn, he liked granny porn and trans porn. So he was an equal opportunity offender. Whether you were an infant or a granny or anyone in between, any porn was good enough for him. Now, I'm not going to go through the others. That it's a rendition, quite frankly, of the things that you just heard. But for a minute, let me change gears here. Let me tell you that all together in this operation, we filed 2,777 criminal felony charges against this group of people. I want to thank State Attorney Brian Haas, who's simply the very best, and our prosecutor that worked with us, as he always has, and Brad Copley is just absolutely fantastic, and he is our not only the expert in prosecuting these cases, he also directs and gives us legal advice as we conduct the investigations. So we go to Harrison Egbert's house. I'm going to refer to him as Egbert because I think that name is appropriate for what I'm about to tell you, whereby we were charging him with 1,000 counts of child pornography. He said he was a hoarder of child pornography. He liked to keep it around. In fact, we only charged him with 1,000 counts, or to be specific, 999 counts, because, you know, the computer systems aren't set up to take 1,000 criminal charges on one person. But we have 3,000 more photographs and videos that he has. So if what I'm about to tell you doesn't get him in prison for about 18 life felonies, or 18 different life terms, nothing will. He was a U.S. Marine veteran. He worked for Lead Feathers in their custom shop as an armorer. Lead Feathers is a very popular gun store in the Winter Haven area with a great reputation, but little did they know they had a deviant and a pervert as an armorer who worked in their custom shop. But during the investigation, part of the interview circles around, do you know child victims? And during the interview, he admitted that he was a hands-on offender, that he had created child porn with 2 children he had access to. Those children, at the time he created this child porn, were 5 years old and 3 years old. And he did this after he got them into a shower. And then Egbert told us about a friend of his, David Lavin Jr. David Lavin Jr. is a contractor. He installs audio, video equipment, and apparently Department of Transportation requires some kind of certifications on trucks. So he didn't work for DOT. He would work for different trucking companies, certifying that their trucks were eligible to drive on the highways. He's married, this gets complicated, to Ivanette Leon, who's 30. Okay? I'll get back to her in a minute. She's not out of the box either. So he said, Egbert tells us that he and his friend both have sexually battered a little girl that they found access to, who was between 6 and 8 years of age. A female. On multiple occasions when she was as young as 6, over a 2-year period. We found videos of their sexual conduct. Now keep in mind, when they created this child porn and they sent it out, these children will be victimized for the rest of their lives. There's no way to wipe it and get it off of the internet. And I can tell you, our big internet companies that created this infrastructure could stop it, but they don't because they're greedy. You see, money is more important to them than the fact that children have been victimized. So as they had sex with these children they had access to, we recovered a text message between Egbert and Lavin, where they were texting each other. Things such about how wonderful the sex was and how they planned to do it again, and the different maturations they planned during the sexual encounter, and who all they wanted to try to locate or attract or groom into the business. We saw a lot of bravado, a lot of bragging, a lot of teamwork. We found a video of one of these guys sexually battering a child and taking a video, while the other man, Lavin, also videoed it from a different perspective while creating a pleasurable experience for himself. You can't make this stuff up. This is the most horrible thing we have seen in a very long time. Two adults attacking a little girl. I didn't stutter. And we have multiple pictures of this. They admitted during this event and talked about future engagements and having sex with young children. Then they exchanged all the video. And then there's Ivanette. Ivanette is married to Lavin. She was charged with tampering with a victim, which is a life felony, and contributing to the dependency of a victim, and she was arrested. And they let her bond out of jail. That's right. Well, we had other charges pending, and we went back yesterday and rearrested her for accessory after the fact. She only cared for Lavin. She didn't care for this child that they gained access to at all. In fact, she pressed that child that they had access to, that they gained access to, and groomed them and coached this baby never to say a word. Did you hear that? Did you hear what she did to protect him? To allow this environment to continue to go on? We found the child. The child is an emotional wreck, was not going to talk at all, but made some statements and admissions to us, and with the appropriate care will talk to us again later. The child was totally devastated. So during all of this, we ran into Sharon Speller. Now, many people from Winter Haven should recognize Sharon Speller. You see, she owned a daycare where about 40 children attended, called Kids Clubhouse Learning Center. Now, parents, I want to have a news flash here. The 40 of you that were taking your child to the Kids Clubhouse Learning Center on Cypress Gardens Road to the daycare, you were taking them to an unlicensed daycare center. She didn't have the authority to run a daycare center. She didn't have a license to run a daycare center, but you were taking your children there. Well, that's where we located one of our victims. And when we located Mom went with the detectives to pick up the victim. And guess what? We told Shannon Speller, there is a criminal investigation underway. Do not say anything to anybody. But she did. She not only ran an illegal center, but as soon as we left, she started telling those she knew, which got back to the principles of this investigation. And guess what? As a result of that, David Lavin ran and hid when the word got back to him, because the owner of the daycare center where one of the victims attended put the word out so David would hear it. She went to jail. DCF and the sheriff's office has shut down her illegal business. Now, I want to underscore at this early stage of the investigation, we have no information, zero, that any of the other children were sexually abused. But if I was a parent, I'd be asking questions of my child. I would be concerned. And parents, let me give you just like a piece of free advice here. Do you not check out and ensure that the daycare centers watching your babies are licensed, are certified, are trained, are legal? If you don't, I would suggest you start doing that, because you put your children in the hands of somebody who was willing to tell the suspects that an investigation was underway. We got pages of stuff here, and I'm trying to decide what I can say. So when we were talking to our one victim, our little girl, she said, if I talk, I won't get the cell phone they promised me. They programmed this child not to talk. Our heart breaks for these babies and these children. But once again, I'm going to introduce to you the subject matter expert, Dr. Mary Ann Thomas, for her to make statements about the hope and the opportunity and the way that we can rescue children and what we can do, and how we as a community have to work together to stop this in its track. How the internet companies, the big players in this, have got to sit down in the boardrooms and say, this could be your child or my child, your infant or my infant. And why we sit here and make a lot of money, and I don't begrudge them making money, we've got a moral and ethical obligation, if not a legal one, to stop people from transmitting sex porn of babies, of infants across our systems. They could do that, ladies and gentlemen. But there's no critical mass out here on social media that's turned on the giants in the industry saying, stop it. Stop it. There's algorithms in all of this child porn. They can stop it, but they won't. You need to ask them why. Dr. Thomas.
Thank you all. And this is a hard topic, right? Nobody wants to talk about what happens to children, especially when it's something awful like this. And unfortunately, this is what we see every day in my line of work. I am Dr. Mary Ann Thomas, and I work for One More Child in their anti-trafficking department. And what we do is we provide services to boys and girls as young as 10 years old who have been trafficked. Unfortunately, what you've heard about today is not new. It's not new to us. It is something that we hear every day. What we know is that 70% of child sex trafficking happens online. That's scary as a parent. That's scary to know that your child has all of this access to everything in the world, which could be great. It's great for knowledge, it's great for community, but that also gives access to your child. That gives predators access to your children. The number one way parents can prevent this is to know what your children are doing online, to make sure that you have access to all of their social media, even if it means they don't like you when you ask. Check their passwords, log into their things, see what they are doing, see who is talking to them. You heard the sheriff talk about grooming a few times, and that is how this happens. The movie Taken is great, it's very entertaining, but that is a very small percentage of human sex trafficking victims. Most of them are trafficked by someone who gets to know them, who is familiar to them. It has to be somebody who has access to your child. And the number one way right now is through their social media, through their video games, through those chat rooms. They groom your child. They get to know your child. They talk to them in kind ways. It's not mean. It's, hey, you're a really nice kid. You seem to have a lot of smarts. You have a lot going on. And it starts with something that seems very simple. A picture of just your face. That's easy. Most people wouldn't think twice about sending that. And it's a gradual pushing of your boundaries until you are doing things you never thought you would do. And for very young kids, and we do know that that they are 20% of children under 18 that are trafficked, 20% are under the age of 8. That's a lot, and that's very young. And you have to think a lot of very little kids wouldn't think twice about taking a picture and sending it somewhere. Once you've sent one picture, it's easier to send the next. Once you've been enticed with a cell phone or with lives on a video game, it's easier to do the next thing. And that is what a trafficker does, is they push those boundaries until you no longer have any. The children don't know what's going on. They think this is a friend. They think this is someone who cares about them. They come at them as someone who cares about them. And the children are just pawns in a very ugly game that we all have to watch. And this is what we are doing with Polk County Sheriffs, is we are stopping these people. We are recovering victims. And once we are found, then what happens next is we provide great services for them. We provide counseling for children who have been found. We provide mentorship. People like me who have come through that life, who understand what it is like to live that life, and are able to walk alongside boys and girls and say, this doesn't have to be your future. Just because something bad happened to you, it does not have to define who you are. It doesn't have to be what you are for the rest of your life. And that's why it's important for operations like this, where we are able to find the child victims early and get them the help that they need. It does take a community. I am so thankful for our partnership with Polk County Sheriff's Department. I love every officer, detective, deputy that I've ever worked with, and I appreciate the heart that they have for the community, that I see trauma-informed people doing good work, arresting bad guys, and making sure that victims get the help that they need. Thank you all so much for allowing me to speak about what is really near and dear to my heart. And I hope that you will take this and share this information so that we can put an end to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. We'll entertain questions, and depending on what they are, we may answer them or we may not. So,
this is one for Dr. Thomas. How savable are the kids? How healable are they when they've gone through such trauma?
Well, I'm standing here, so I guess it's okay. But it takes a lot of work, right? First, it takes somebody who's going to recognize us and someone who's going to say that we are worthy of help. Often we get shoved aside and we get put into a system that doesn't have a lot of answers. So finding the right care is important. And then it takes counseling, and it takes support, and it takes a community who's going to love that child through a lot of hard times, because they're not just going to say, gee, thank you for rescuing me, and now life is better. There's going to be a lot of pushback and a lot of hard times ahead, and so consistency is what's very important in helping a child get through this.
okay.
Sheriff, I do have a other topic question. Apparently, we have viewers on WFLA now from around the world that would love your take on the Gabby Petito case and the search for Brian Laundrie.
Gabby Petito. I'm not involved in that investigation. My team's not involved in that investigation. I could only speculate based upon news reports, and as you know, those are incomplete at best, and sometimes they can be fictionalized at worst. I can tell you that according to Florida law, when she was a victim of domestic violence originally, he would have been arrested. I can tell you at this sheriff's office, when he showed up with her car and she was no place to be found, we would never have let him out of our custody that day. Other than that, I'm not sure where their investigation is. Okay? Thank you very much. I appreciate you being with us. When we all work together, we can save children. We can prevent children from being the victims of deviant child sex attacks on them. But it takes all of us working together. And put some heat on the tech giants. They created this system. They can fix this area. But they're not going to until they're avalanched from around this state, this nation, and this country. And then they'll do something about it. Thank you.